Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me once again. This is Series 2, Episode number 7. We're into the second half of this series now. I've had a nice little break. I've had a beautiful holiday with the family. I'm back, I'm refreshed. I'm really eager to get back into the podcasting. And my first guest back didn't let me down at all. Absolute great guy. His name's Rick Martin. Rick has a great story to tell. He was diagnosed with carotid artery blockage at the age of 50. Now, I feel like at this point of Rick's life, it was almost a make or break moment for his future. He could have took the doctor's advice and gone on to prescription drugs, but he decided through some research and reading and being kind of defiant, I suppose, that's not the route he wanted to take. The way Rick turned his life around at this point and the things that he overcame, the things that he achieved are truly inspirational. So without further ado, I don't want to talk too much. At the beginning of this podcast, I want Rick to sort of tell you the story. It was, for me, very inspirational, and I hope you guys find it inspirational also. Before we go into this, actually, one more thing. We didn't even get to speak about a lot of the stuff that I would like to speak to Rick about, so he will be coming back for part 2 because there's so much more we can cover off. There's so many more achievements, there's health and nutrition, lifestyle, so much that we didn't wrap up in this podcast, but enjoy this one for now, and Rick will be back in the near future. Hey, Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Richard.
I appreciate you taking time to come on. So just to quickly clear this one up for the audience, you are Rick Martin, not Ricky Martin, i.e. living La Vida Loca.
That is correct.
And I know that's not the first time somebody said that.
No, but I haven't heard that in many years, to be honest. I thought it was finally past me, but apparently not.
Ricky. That song was a pretty big hit over here, so I don't think we'll ever forget Ricky Martin. But I suppose he's not done much for a while. So yeah, are you actually Rick, or is your name Richard?
Well, my formal name is actually Richard, but most people call me Rick. Yeah,
me too. Well, mostly my family, they call me Rick. A lot of friends, they call me Rich. Which it's a bit of an odd one. Some people from sort of further up north of England will call me Rick, and then I don't know. It's just how people seem to.
What should I call you?
Hey, you can call me whatever you like. I've been called everything. So yeah, call me Rick, Richard.
Well, maybe to differentiate, I'll call you Richard.
Yeah, as long as people don't look at this and say that it's a pair of dicks, then you know. All right, let's not digress too much, and let's talk about you. Let's talk about you, Rick Martin, and what you're about. Let's get a bit of background on yourself. So this podcast is going to be a lot about running. It's going to be about health and fitness. You've got quite a story to tell. So do you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself as a runner, where you got into running, how you found that you liked running as the choice of sport, if you like?
Yeah, it started pretty early. I attempted several other sports first before I got into running.
Okay.
And essentially what I found was the only aspect of, I was in an American football and baseball are my two primary sports. But the aspects of those two sports, and I won't get into too much detail since your listeners don't know the intricacies of those two sports. But to summarize, the only part of those sports I was really good at was I was fast. And so if there was something, some kind of play or some kind of aspect to the game that relied on speed, then I was pretty good at it. But all the other techniques involved, not so much. So I ended up in high school. I got injured in American football practice. And so I went to the doctor, and he was pretty progressive at the time. He suggested I do some distance running to rehab. It was actually a knee injury. And so I started running with the wrestling team. The wrestling team would run this 3-mile course every every 2 or 3 days. So the first day I joined him, I had never run, more than, I don't know, quarter mile, maybe, I don't know. And I ran 3 miles and I was up with the leaders. So sort of a light bulb went off and said, hey, maybe this is what I should be doing. That was really sort of the first realization that, I'm probably good at running, but everything else I haven't been too successful at. So that's where I got my start, to be honest, running with a wrestling team. And so then I got into cross country.
I was just about to ask if you did that. Yeah, we did cross country. Yeah, I used to do a bit of that at school. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I started cross country, and I did pretty well, and just progressively got better. And then by my senior year, I was winning most of the meets. In fact, I won a lot of the meets when I was a junior also. But
wow,
I was pretty good at it, and I tried. We ran odd distances. The courses were between like 2.25 and 2 3/4 miles. I don't know why they were so odd of a distance, but so to sort of translate it into something you could compare to today, I think 5K is 5K pretty standard in Great Britain.
Yeah, I like to use miles. I'm still kind of old school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Funny.
I always used to, when I'm tracking my runs and stuff, I'm always looking, I post some miles out there, but I think people do K more because it looks better. So if you do 5K, it sounds better than 3 miles. Or,
okay.
Well,
I meant race distances. I mean, it's funny because we don't use the metric system here, but all our race distances are in kilometers. So the standard.
So 5K, 10K, they're the kind of runs. Yeah. So I was entered into a 10K this year, which has been cancelled and postponed, and now I think is going to be kind of some virtual event. So still waiting to hear a bit more on that. So yeah, they do tend to do that.
Okay, so just to give you perspective, I would have been running somewhere between 15 and 16 minutes at that time in my life. Yeah, in a 5K. Yeah, that's about where I was at. Yeah, because I would cross in several races. I would cross the 2 mile mark under 10 minutes. So I was under 5 minutes a mile. For at least the first 2 miles anyway. So
it's taking me like 10. It takes me 10, 11 for the first one. I'm not quite out for that.
Well, I was a lot younger. I was, 16, 17 years old. So but that gives you sort of a perspective of where I was at one point in time in my life.
Sure.
I was pretty fast, and I had, I went to state championships and so forth. And so that's where I was at one point. That's sort of like the high water mark. But then it slowly goes downhill from there. So
is that when life starts to happen?
Yeah, I didn't.
The usual scenario.
Yeah, life did start to happen. I didn't run in college. I actually, I never studied in high school at all. And so I actually started studying in college, actually taking studies seriously in college. And, I played a lot of tennis and intramural type things, but I wasn't on a formal team. And so I didn't run in college. I probably, I said, I probably played more tennis than anything. But then I got out and I got married. I got married 1 year after being out of college, and I ran, between 17 and 18 minutes, 5K. So I had slowed down, but I was only doing about half the amount of training that I did when I was in high school.
Sure, but still like super fast, really. When I look at that anyway, to me, that's still really quick.
Yeah. I mean, I was still moving along. Yeah, I was still moving along. But so fast forward about 20 years. So now I'm about to turn 50. And things have changed dramatically. I didn't run once I had kids. I have 2 daughters. They're 31, 35. But I didn't I didn't really run. I mean, maybe occasional jog here and there, but for 20 years, I did very little. And yeah, my diet was pretty poor and I gained weight. I mean, that's the natural progression. I put on 30, 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where, I wanted to try to get back into shape about when I was 50. So I went to the local high school track, and it was a 1/4 mile track. And all I could do was run one lap. That's all I could make. And,
wow.
So yeah.
It's amazing how it leaves you, especially when you stop training for a little bit of time.
Yeah. I was.
Never mind 20 years.
Yeah. It does eventually leave you. But so anyway, I'll never forget that one particular day I was at the track, going through this pathetic workout. I'd walk a lap then after I ran the lap, and then I'd attempt a second lap and so forth. So there was a woman there who knew me from high school, coincidentally. And she came up to me and said, "Rick, it pains me to see you like this." And it's like, whoa.
Thanks. A slap in the face or what?
It was sort of a wake-up call, to be honest. It was like, wow, you noticed too. So I scheduled a physical with my doctor. I thought, well, I think you're supposed to get annual physicals when you turn 50. So I better start that, because there might be something wrong with me. I don't know, because I'm, and also my joints are aching at night when I roll over, and, I'm having a lot of aches and pains, and just things that, some people will chalk up to old age, but I was only 50. I didn't think that was old age. So I have this physical with my doctor, and, he was also sort of ahead of his time. He was talking to me about my diet. And in the United States, we had this thing called the food pyramid. Do you have a food pyramid?
No, not that I'm aware of. Explain it to me, and I'll tell you.
The food pyramid, I think they've since abandoned it, but this is a lot of years ago. But the concept was, you had this pyramid where at the bottom of the pyramid were the foods that you should be eating the most of. And as it goes up the pyramid, you would eat less and less of those food. And then at the top of the pyramid would be those foods like ice cream, cake, I guess you eat biscuits.
Yeah.
Right?
Biscuits,
you
chocolate.
love your biscuits, right?
Yeah, McDonald's. I don't know, man. I think it's quite stereotypical.
Well,
I mean, we like all the stuff that you Americans like, because we've caught up now.
Well, I just remember when I was over there, everybody was eating biscuits.
Yes, a biscuit with a cup of tea. That's what it
is. Yes, biscuit with a cup of tea. Anyway, so he says to me, "Well, based on what you told me, you're eating an inverted pyramid diet." In other words, I was, the things I ate the most were the things that were supposed to be at the tip. And I worked, so obviously he was concerned about my diet. And then, so he leaves the room, and I thought I was done, but then he comes back and he says, "Oh, I heard something they take a stethoscope and they run it up and down your carotid artery that feeds the blood supply to your brain. And they listen for any obstructions." And he said, "I heard something, but I don't think it's anything, but I'd like you to get scanned." So I said, "Okay, all right." So I went through this procedure where they do like an ultrasound scanning, looking for the blockages. Yeah. And, the technician is like stone faced. I can't get in. I'm trying to get a sense of whether I have something.
Yeah. It's like when you go through turbulence on an airplane and you look at the cabin crew Because if they look worried, then you're worried.
Exactly.
You try to get some reassurance in there.
Yes.
It's
That's a good analogy. I'm trying to pick up on something, but she's like, she's not letting me see anything, nothing. And she won't tell me anything. And so I just figure that's her training. I just chalk it up to that. And so anyway, a week or so goes by and I get the phone call from the doctor and says, I need you to come in. That doesn't sound good.
Never sounds good. It's never a good sign.
When they can't tell you over the phone and they have to tell you in person, that's never good. It's never good.
That's got to be that must have been scary at that point.
Yeah, it was. I didn't have the specifics, but I soon did. So I go in and he starts drawing this diagram and, you have blockage and it's in the worst location that you could possibly have. And it's the worst type. Apparently, I think it was the hard plaque. I don't know how they determined that, but it was the worst type and the worst location. And it was 60 to 80% blocked in both of my arteries. Wow. So there was a reason why I wasn't feeling good.
Is this something that you was aware of before they told you had it? So it's a carotid artery blockage or carotid artery disease.
Yes. I was not aware at all. The only awareness I had was that my father at age 80 had to have they put stents in your arteries to free it up. And he had to have that procedure done at age 80. So that was my only knowledge about carotid arteries. It's just through what he went through. And but I never in my wildest imagination did I think, 30 years ahead of him, I would be faced with potentially having the same procedure. Yeah.
And when you're looking back at the past and what you've done, and you was relatively fit, and so your diet wasn't great, but I take it you weren't like a smoker or anything like that.
No,
because if you was a runner, so
I didn't even drink that much. I wasn't even a big drink, but I didn't really mention this before, but I had a lot of stress in my life too. So it's not just my diet. It was a combination of the stress. I had a very shaky marriage. My job was very stressful. And, so it was the combination of those two things that
of course
I believe caused it.
Yeah, definitely. Stress causes a lot of problems.
Yeah. And to be honest, I wasn't really working out that much other than that pathetic workout that I did, maybe once or twice a week. So anyway, and on top of all that, I sort of had this like creeping midlife crisis thing going on. And so whenever he told me this, that midlife crisis just slapped me upside the head. Like I was immediate midlife crisis. I was really shocked. And, but
just to put it into perspective, and then obviously if listeners haven't heard of this before, so it's when the carotid artery, it occurs like it gets fatty deposits clogged in the blood vessels that deliver the blood to your brain. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So therefore you're at risk of stroke, for instance.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's a very serious condition anyway.
Yes.
And one of the things that I read is that they were saying that it can't be reversed.
Yeah, that's the conventional wisdom. That's I have a sort of a story about my first visit with the cardiologist. So I'll try to explain that because that's what he told me. It can't be reversed.
Yeah,
and
so not what you want to hear.
No, well, that's not what I read either. Because when I got this announcement from my general practitioner, the first thing I did is I started reading. I just dove myself into reading about this whole thing, and I read 5 or 6 books. The internet wasn't as big, but I did also do additional research looking for scientific studies on this whole topic. And so I had done a lot of research and latched on to an approach by a cardiologist in California called Dean Ornish. And he said that it could be reversed. And so I was optimistic. But so, about a month after I met with my GP, actually, I need to back up. Before I even went to see the cardiologist, they had me do a stress test, a nuclear stress test where they put dye in your system, and it basically traces the blockage in your heart. And I failed it. Yeah, I failed it. So I had blockage in my heart too. It wasn't just my carotid artery.
Oh, right.
So it was, it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to go back to what you were saying about the reading the books and stuff, and the internet wasn't so big. I think actually that was probably a positive thing, because trying to self-diagnose or looking at things on Google, I've done it in the past, and it's not good. You can really lead yourself down a rabbit hole, and it's not always the truth. So reading actual books that have probably been published by real doctors and people that have this wealth of medical knowledge is probably the best way you could have gone, to at least put you in the right sort of frame of mind to say, actually, we can beat this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's sort of a dangerous territory to rely on search engines because you can get all kinds of stories, and you don't know how valid these stories are. You don't know. So I limited it to the books that I read, which were all written by cardiologists.
Yeah.
And actually we have a website called PubMed, which shows our government, the studies that were done. And so, you have to really sift through all the detail because it's all scientific literature. But I spent time looking at those studies as well. And so, one of those studies showed that, of all things, pomegranate juice actually has been shown to reverse blockage in carotid arteries. Yeah, that was one that I wanted to discuss with the cardiologist. So, so I go in to see him, and so I'm all prepared with my studies, and because I did not want to really be on prescription medicines because of all the things I read about the long-term side effects.
Yeah,
and especially statins. And I don't want to get into all that right now, but my goal was to get off. My GP immediately put me on statins. For your listeners, it's basically a type of drug that lowers cholesterol. And
okay, that we'd probably call a beta blocker, I think.
Oh, that's another type. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
That's
okay.
Another type.
I don't know what a statin is. I'm not very medical minded either. So, but I'll look that up after the show.
Yeah, Google that once and look at the long-term side effects. But anyway, so yeah, that was sort of my goal. He had me on blood pressure lowering medicine and low dose aspirin, which serves as a blood thinner.
Okay.
That's pretty standard procedure. So anyway, I go into this meeting with the cardiologist, and I want to discuss these studies, and he's dismissive. He just says, "Look, I haven't read about your studies, and if I haven't read about them, then they're not valid." I said, "Okay." And then he's there, "I want to double your statin dosage." And I said, "Well, I've been on this. I changed my diet. I've done I explained to him all the things I've changed in my life since, a month ago. Don't you want to at least check where my cholesterol is before you double my dosage?"
Yeah, sure.
Well, he didn't like that.
Okay. So he didn't like that you were challenging him because
No.
he's been like, oh, I went to college and all that kind of stuff, and you're reading books and you're trying to tell me that, tell me my job kind of thing.
Yes.
It was one of them guys, right?
Exactly. And then I'll never forget his words. He said, look, just take the meds and don't screw it up. That's what he told me. That's how he cut me off. Just take the meds, don't screw it up. Oh, and then he said, in 5 to 10 years, you're probably going to have a stent put in. And
somebody needs to tell this guy about his bedside manner.
You know what's sort of astonishing is I recently, probably within a year, I went to this website. It's called Health Grades. Okay. And it's a basically a review system where people can post reviews of doctors. Right. And I went into his Health Grade reviews. He gets good reviews. Yeah.
Maybe he's paying people.
Well, I think there's a mentality. No, yeah, there's
I was going to say, I think because he knows that that's there now. It's quite funny, actually, because it reminds me of, I don't know if you watch Black Mirror.
No.
It's a good TV show. You can find it on Netflix, but it's very much about the future. It's about, well, not just the future, but technology and the way things are moving and evolving. And one episode in particular, so every episode's actually different. So you can pick it up wherever. You can just tune in and watch one episode. It doesn't matter if you've watched episode 1 of season 1, because it'll be just totally different to any other episode that you'll watch. And one episode in particular that just sprung to mind there is where, almost like Uber and places like that, where everything's like being judged on. So if I met you in the street, I would actually rate you on the interaction that I've had with you. And that kind of makes me feel like, yeah, it is going that way, especially if people are rating doctors now. I mean, that seems a bit far-fetched. We don't do that. We rate Uber drivers. Well, we're kind of encouraged to rate Uber drivers, and we might, I don't know, rate a podcast, for instance, or something like that. But, as far as rating professions like doctors, I think it's a little bit, for me personally, maybe, you could rate them on, how they were hospitality wise, I suppose, if they had a good bedside manner or whatever. But how can you rate somebody on a profession that's kind of specialist and you know nothing about?
Well, I don't know. We Americans rate everything.
So obviously this is where this idea has come from, and it's not just come out of nowhere, because it seemed it was a kind of crazy, but every single thing they were doing, they were rating, and they had to get to a certain amount of points to be, like, I suppose, popular. Certain people might not talk to this, because as you've walked past me, for instance, I would, on my phone, it would automatically tell me what rating you are. So then I might not talk to you because you're, let's say, 2 stars and I'm 4.5 stars. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a common mentality here there's a lot of people that say, just give me the drugs. I don't want to change my life. Just give me the drugs. And he's very eager to give you the drugs.
That's why he's rated so well. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of my theory. I'm guessing.
You probably are a little bit of an anomaly, really. To do that research. Yeah,
I admit that's a kind word, anomaly.
It's true. It's true what you say.
I've been called a lot worse than that. So anyway, so the changes that I'm making to my life is my diet, which I'm trying to adopt the diet that Dean Ornish is recommending, which is essentially a vegan diet. Okay. But his program is not all diet. It's sort of 3-pronged approach. It's a diet, stress reduction, and exercise. So for stress reduction, I start taking yoga. And I
knew that was coming. I just knew it was coming.
I loved it, actually. I had never tried it before. And I was taking it 3 times a week. And I had a great instructor. This instructor was actually ex-military. We have a military college in Carlisle, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
When I was living near. And this guy was just absolutely, I've never run across a yoga instructor as good as him ever since. But
That's awesome.
yeah, anyway, I was very fortunate. So I went to
I
him.
actually interviewed a Navy SEAL, or he's an ex-Navy SEAL now, and he's actually gone into the same kind of thing, mindfulness and meditation. Oh, did you?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
I did. I was very
John
impressed.
McGaskill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I, like he was saying, you had to put aside that toxic masculinity and, because
of the stigma. There is a stigma just with it, but I love yoga myself.
Yes.
Did you do hot yoga? Did you try that?
No, I haven't tried that. I have some friends that have, but have you?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah. I loved it. Yeah? Absolutely loved it. I was sweating from places I didn't know I could sweat from. It was unbelievable. Genuinely.
Well, they say it simulates a lot of the advantages of a sauna. So
yeah, sure it does. And I don't know, I think maybe helps a little bit more with the I'm not very flexible, especially like my hamstring area. But I think when you're warmed up as well, it's actually a bit easier to get into those poses.
Yeah, it is. Sure.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then for exercise, I joined a hiking club. This club was hiking across my state of Pennsylvania on the Appalachian Trail. And for your listeners who don't know what the Appalachian Trail is, it's a trail that runs from one of our southern states, Georgia, up to one of our northernmost state in the continental U.S. is Maine.
I feel like I've heard of it.
It's a pretty iconic
Georgia
trail.
So did David Goggins run this trail? Are you aware of David Goggins?
Oh yeah. I don't know that he did. There's an ultra runner named Scott Jurek and Carl Meltzer. Those are two famous ultra runners that have run it. But anyway, it's a 2,100 mile trail. And so they were going across Pennsylvania in sections, like day hikes. Sure. And I joined them, and it was great. And it was really eventually the segue into ultra running is really what it led to eventually. But, that's further down the story, for now. Yeah.
I was going to say, just to roll it back, going back to the doctor and his kind of ignorance and saying double your dosage and basically shut up and don't mess it up.
Yeah.
What made you go, actually, now I'm going to keep on this path and carry on with the diet? Did you manage to get like a second opinion to be able to get your cholesterol checked, or?
Yes. There's a story behind that. It's just a wild coincidence. So I was not happy when I came out of that meeting, and I just didn't accept his opinion because I'm reading these authorities that are a national level. And, this guy is like a local guy. I don't place a lot of weight on his opinion. To be honest, it contradicts what all these other people were telling me. And so I wanted another opinion. So I started looking, but it's tough because, everybody's around here. I was thinking about trying to go down to Johns Hopkins University. It's a little more famous. It's about a 2-hour drive south of where I was living. But just coincidence would have it. One day at work, I hear a guy raving about his cardiologist. I mean, you don't hear that conversation too often. That somebody's raving about their cardiologist.
So if you've listened to the podcast, did you happen to listen to Colm Holland, who I had on?
No, I didn't. No.
Right. Okay. So if you want to talk about coincidences and that are actually not coincidences, that's a good one to listen to. But continue on with the story. Yeah.
So he's raving, and I say, "Hey, do you mind telling me his name?" And he goes, "Well, I could tell you his name, but he's not taking any more clients. Or patients. He's in such demand, he's booked up." I said, "Well, just tell me, and I'll at least try. So he tells me the name, Dr. Fugate. And I start thinking, that name sounds very familiar to me. Fugate. I know I've heard it somewhere. Yeah, well,
it's not very common, so.
No, it isn't. So it finally dawned on me. My oldest daughter was dating the doctor's son.
Amazing.
So that's where I heard his name. And so I call his office up, and they tell me no, he's not taking any more patients. And so I'm a little desperate. I just say, hey, well, that's a shame, because I wanted to meet him because his son is dating my daughter. And so whoever I was talking to leaves for a few seconds, and she comes back and says, okay, he'll do it. And so
Excellent.
That's the only way I got in. It was because of this coincidence that, my daughter was dating a son. So anyway,
that's brilliant. That's fate. That is not coincidence. That is fate.
I guess it is fate. I don't know where coincidence crossovers to fate, and we can get into philosophical discussions, but it's amazing, and it really worked out because this guy was great. He had a completely different approach. He wanted to listen to me, first of all, and I told him
very important.
Oh yeah, he actually wanted to listen, and I told him what my goals were. I wanted to reverse this. I wanted to get off all prescription meds eventually, not right away.
Yeah, sure.
And those were my goals. And he said, okay, I'll work with you. Well, what we'll do is we're going to do a rescan your carotid arteries, and we're going to give you a different type of stress test. It was called an echo stress test. And so we're going to do that periodically, and we're going to check your progress. Because I told him all the lifestyle things, and he was a runner, by the way, too, which helped. Yeah,
even more so fated.
Yeah. He was a runner. So after about 6 months, I did a battery test, and it came back, definitely improvement, definitely going in the right direction. Less blockage. So it was already changing,
Yeah.
The other doctor said, you can only slow the rate of progress, whereas already I'm starting to slightly reverse it.
Mm.
And long story short, over a 2-year period, after 2 years, the blockage was down to excellent levels, and my results on my echocardiogram were excellent. So
fantastic.
I was effectively reversed, and I had lost a good bit of weight. I probably lost 35 pounds, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was all through the hiking, change of diet, or was you running at this point as well in between those 2 years?
I wasn't even running quite yet. Well, in that 2-year time period, I probably started up running.
Okay.
I probably started that, but and I tried to even reduce some stress in my marriage and the job, but that wasn't going real well. But anyway, I was making progress, so I was very, very happy about that. And but eventually my marriage just blows up, and I end up moving out. I separated in 2009. I moved over to this town. Have you ever heard of Hershey chocolate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We don't just eat biscuits.
Okay. You eat Hershey chocolate too. Okay.
Yeah, Hershey chocolate is good.
Yeah.
Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Yeah, that's your favorite. Yeah.
I think, pretty much. They don't do a great deal. I suppose if you go to like a supermarket, you can get the other stuff, but they tend to just do the cookies and cream by the local store near me. So that's the one I end up eating if I buy any anyway. It's not
Yeah.
as good as Cadbury's. We have Cadbury's here. Cadbury's is much better chocolate.
Cadbury's.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming that Hershey's is the best, but that's where I'm living. I'm living in the town called Hershey. Yeah, that's where I'm living, and so as you can imagine, I'm super stressed from
from
my marriage was 30 years. I was married for 30 years, so this is a shock, and my stress levels are now even higher, and so I thought, I need to step it up because I couldn't go to the guy that I was going to see for yoga because it was just too far. And and the hiking was pretty much just on the weekends. So I started back into running. I got back into running, and then I started thinking, you always call yourself a runner, but you never ran a marathon. So I felt like I had to run a marathon. So I set a goal to run my first marathon. And so I trained for that. And 2011, I ran my first one, and my goal was to break 4 hours, and I did. I ran around 3:53, something like that. So
that's awesome, man. And what age? 50?
Wow. I'd had to back it up. This was 2011. So it was
9 years ago.
That's 9 years 53? Ago. I'm 64. So,
Oh, okay. So
I was 56.
Like yeah. That's 55.
Or five.
Yeah. That's sorry. Good, though. Like, I couldn't. 55. Well, I mean, yeah. I think one day I've got to do it. I've done a bit of running myself, but. It's the first one I've tried to do, this 10K, which I know I can do a 10K, but it's the first one that I've ever entered, and it happens to get cancelled. But
that's a shame.
I'll definitely get back into it. But yeah, just going back to what you were saying actually about the stress and everything else, and getting back into running. Do you find that it's really good for your mental health running? Really clears your mind.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I did it, because it's such a effective stress reducer, and even
more so than the hiking that you were doing prior to that.
Yeah, I would say yeah. I mean,
why do you think
I'm only doing that one day a week hiking, so I could run. Yeah, I don't think I was running every day, but I was probably running 4 days and then doing the hike on the weekend. So you can do it more frequently.
Yeah.
So.
But you feel like, because I would say it's because you release the endorphins. Yes. I used to use a bit of a weird analogy, release the dolphins, because, a lot of people, they sort of look at dolphins, when people swim with dolphins and stuff like that, that's supposed to be, it's kind of almost magical. It makes people feel good. And so I used to use this weird analogy, like release the dolphins. But do you feel like that you release more endorphins when you're running than you would do hiking? And that's potentially why.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I think you would. I mean, a good long hike also. I mean, we were hiking for hours, so I never really compared the two, but running's definitely more intense. Yeah, it's at an intenser level, so the intensity of the endorphins is probably greater. I assume. I never made that comparison, but anyway, it was helping. I mean, it was helping my mental state for sure. And
definitely.
Yeah, and then after that, I always need a goal. I'm that type of person. I have a hard time just training without a goal. So my next goal was to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I looked it up. It's based on your sex and age group. Mm-hmm. And at the time, my the cutoff was 3 hours and 40 minutes. Okay. So, in my mind,
not too far off.
Yeah. In my mind, I have to knock, 13, 14 minutes off. So that's like 30 seconds a mile, or maybe a little more off what I ran.
Doesn't sound too much, but it's, when you're actually trying to do it, it's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. On paper, it doesn't sound too outrageous, but yeah, it's still a pretty significant leap. You have to get a little more serious about the type of training you're doing, and so anyway, I didn't do it right away. I actually started dating somebody that was a biker, and I was biking for a while. And then, actually, before I even ran the qualifying race, one day, this was another sort of twist of fate. And one day, it was a hot day, and I was running near Hershey, and there's this park near there that has what they call a nature trail. It goes through the woods. It's not real long. It's like a mile and a half, but it goes through the woods. And I wanted to get out of the sun, because it was really hot. So I decided I'm just going to run on this trail. And up until this point, I had never run on a trail. I mean, I hiked on a trail, but I never tried to run on a trail. I don't know why I didn't.
Exactly. Just because of the terrain?
Yeah, I don't know why I never connected the two. I just never did. They were like separate worlds. You hike on a trail and you run on a road. And so I was running on this trail, and I loved it. It was like this great revelation to me. It's like, I can't believe I didn't think of this before. This is wonderful. This is so much more relaxing. You're sort of ensconced in this canopy of greenery, and it's beautiful. And, as opposed to a road where there's traffic and noise.
I hate road running. Absolutely hate road running. I always used to find my mum lived by a really nice canal. So I'd like drive to her house and then run from hers and go down this canal path. Where I am now, I'm right next to a river, the River Derwent, so I'll try and run around that way. I only discovered that quite recently as well. So I was doing some road running. I was like, I've got this literally on my doorstep, found that, and it was brilliant. And especially at the beginning of the lockdown, when there was no cars and stuff, the air was just so clean, and everything, you could smell all the trees, and it was beautiful. And it's, for me, you can take your mind somewhere else. You can kind of just look around, take in the scenery, and actually forget about the fact that you're running. And that was what always made it better for me. And that's kind of one of the tips I always try to give to people if they are starting to run or something. I'll say, like, try and take your mind somewhere else. Try and take in the nature around you and things like that. Road running becomes a bit of a chore, and I hate runs where you've got like a really long straight road and you've got no kind of checkpoints. I like to be able to see something and know, all right, I can get to that point and then, find a new checkpoint. Is that something that you do?
Oh, absolutely. That has to do with your mind is, if it can just see this long straightaway, it gets more intimidated than if it's more, you're not in the moment. Like, you're not living in the moment when you're looking down the road that far. But when you're in the woods and you have to pay attention to where you're running, it forces you to sort of focus on living in the moment. And that, to me, is a big difference between running out in the open, like you described, and some long road that's you can see forever. Because your mind just starts to gravitate as, oh my God, I got to get the whole way down to that.
It's just getting over that. It's all in the mind, isn't it? It's just mind games. It is. You're just trying to get past that. And if, like you say, if you can take the focus elsewhere, you suddenly forget, and you can actually, when it is nice surroundings, you can start to enjoy it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, so it was totally different, and so I ended up signing up for a trail race because I just wanted to try racing on the trails. Well, I guess this is lesson number one for people, is have the right equipment, because I showed up at this trail race, which it turned out was on very we use the term technical, but it means rocky, super rocky. And so I showed up in road shoes because that's all I owned. And I could get away with that in this little rinky-dink trail in my little park. But this was the big leagues. This was rocky with dramatic elevation gain. And so it was a whole different ball game. And I didn't really do my due diligence. I was sort of just naive. I just signed up. I didn't know what I was getting into. And that's one thing I would tell people is you really need to study or know and
so what,
have an
what
appreciation.
Kind of footwear are they running then in these trails?
Well, there's a whole class of shoes called trail runners. They're basically
they'll be like a hiking boot hybrid trainer.
No, they're not. They're very light. I mean, they're not much heavier than a road shoe. The only reason they're a little bit heavier is because they have a beefier tread for grip, and some of them might have what's called a rock plate. It's sort of a plastic wedge that protects your feet against rocks.
But then there's like more people running with these sort of, I don't know, almost like gloves over the feet.
Oh,
like these kind of rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's them. Yeah. I've seen those a lot. And I'm like, that's crazy. But people are kind of trying to harden the soles of the feet because they say, years ago people could run about in no shoes. And I go back caveman days, obviously, when there were no shoes. And I think people are trying to say that, we're just soft because we've grown up with socks and shoes and things like that, and they're trying to harden the feet and I suppose the muscles and everything. But I think you're just going to callous your feet to a point where, I don't know, they'll just be pretty disgusting.
Well, that whole craze started after the book Born to Run came out. Did you ever read that book?
No, I didn't know. Who's that by?
It's by an author named Christopher McDougall. You should read it. It's very entertaining.
Yeah.
It goes into sort of the whole they have a professor from Harvard explaining the advantages of the human race for ultra running, that we were designed for ultra running, and it goes into the whole minimalism, or the reason why you should wear these minimal shoes, and including the shoes you're describing, and that you should get away from wearing cushioned shoes because it interferes with the body's natural gait and so forth. Yeah, you have to read the book. I don't want to go into too much of it, but a lot of people went out and bought those shoes after they read that book. And a lot of people proceeded to injure themselves because you're walking around all your life in cushioned shoes and elevated heels. You can't just throw them on.
No, it's about conditioning, isn't it? You can't just go from one extreme to the next. I've literally just downloaded that book on Audible as you were telling me about it. Yeah, I'm interested.
Okay. Yeah, I recommend it. Yeah. So anyway, yes, there is sort of a philosophical argument within the ultra running community. I mean, you will see some ultra runners in races wearing sandals. I've been in races where there's people running. Yeah, sandals. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's got chafe on you. Like, I suppose, what type of sandals? Like what I don't know if you call it a thong in America, the ones that go between your toes.
They come in different varieties.
Yeah.
No, these are designed for running. I mean, these are not off the shelf sandals. These are running sandals, but they're still a sandal. I mean, there's nothing on the top of your feet.
Right.
And I have
it's a whole different world.
Yeah, I have seen in races. My first 100-mile race, I saw a guy running. He ran the whole thing. He runs them all the time. He doesn't run them very fast, though. I mean, he's not super fast, but he finishes it. And there's a woman down South Carolina I have run into at a couple of races, and she always wears sandals. Yeah.
I feel
So
like
it's done.
women's feet are more generally sort of tougher than men's anyway because of the type of
Oh,
footwear that they use. Like you
yeah.
think, do you
I
think
don't know. I
women
don't
wear
know.
like stilettos and they wear a lot of like
That,
sandals, flip flops, or whatever anyway.
yeah, but a stiletto wouldn't help you because you're then used to an elevated position, and the
I
sandal is
suppose.
completely flat. So yeah, wearing stilettos would not be good training for a running
Yeah,
sandal.
but I just mean generally the shoes that they're walking in, they're not
Yeah,
wearing socks. I think the socks keep the
yeah.
moisture in your feet. Men tend to have softer feet, I believe. There's a conversation that I was having with a friend, and he was talking about when he had to recently had a baby, and
Yeah.
his other half had asked him to sort of massage her
Uh-huh.
feet, and he said it was horrible. They were like bricks.
What
It's
is this?
due to the footwear, and he was saying that he thinks because his feet are soft. I said my feet are soft, to be fair, and we wear socks and stuff, so the moisture.
I'm going to reach down and touch my feet. You might be on to something. My feet are pretty soft.
Yeah,
I don't know. You might be on to something. I have not really spent much time thinking
genuinely,
about.
if you look at those ped eggs, I would say that it's 90% women that are buying those things. The things that I mean, that they're kind of like a little cheese grater that gets the hard stuff off the heels and the hard skin off.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, but just a theory.
That's an interesting theory. Wow, I'll have to ponder that one. But anyway.
Yeah, not too much about feet, but do you know what I do want to talk? So obviously you got to this point now. So the training that you was doing, what can you just kind of go through that a little bit just for the listeners? I know we spoke before we started the recording, and I was saying that about I've started to walk again now because I've sort of had a bit of time off the gym. I've had a holiday and everything else, so I want to get back into running again, getting back into the gym, but I don't want to throw myself in and get injured.
Okay.
And I know also further to that, there's something that I mentioned to you about that I want to talk about, and it's is it the Mathatone method?
Yeah. I'll tell you what.
Explain that.
I will get to that soon. I'm just going to go up. I want to tell you about my second marathon. And then after that, I started ultra, and then I'll get into exactly what you were just talking about. So, so even though I got into trail running, I still had this unfinished business. I still had this goal of qualifying for Boston. So I went back in 2011. Is that right? No, 2013 for my second marathon. And so like I had said previously, I thought the cutoff was 3 hours and 40 minutes. So I run this marathon, and it finished on a track. It was on like a cinder trail most of the way, but then you went up onto this college track to finish, and they had the big, you could see the time flashing. And so I had to break 3 hours and 40 minutes. I ended up practically sprinting. It felt like a sprint. I don't know from an absolute speed perspective whether it would be considered a sprint, but I gave it my all, and I got in under by 4 seconds. I ran 3:39:56.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm all happy at the end of the race. I'm like ecstatic. I'm going to Boston, blah, blah. Yeah. And so I run into this, just by coincidence, I run into this high school buddy. He was like the second man on our cross country team, and he still runs marathons. And he was more knowledgeable about marathons than I was, because he says to me, I hate to break this to you, but they invite people, the fastest people in your age group first. And then when they fill it up, they're done. So,
right.
You're probably not going to get invited. So what?
Oh, cheers, buddy.
Oh, come on. You're ruining my day. So he was right. That's what happened. I didn't get invited. So Yeah,
Damn.
I was bummed, but I said, okay, well, I was bummed for a while, but I thought, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna try an ultra because, one community rejected me. I'll see if how I make in this out in this other world. So I entered a 50K, and
Wow,
this is
that's crazy.
yeah. Well, not really. It's only not really. It's only 5 more miles. 50K is only
Mate,
31 miles,
yeah, it's
and
crazy to me.
no, it isn't. I would argue. I argue to this day that a 50K is easier. A 50K trail race is easier than a marathon. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because you're on a trail. You're on varying terrain, so you're using many different muscles. You're not. You go out on a road, a flat. Most of these marathons have to have them on flat courses. Otherwise, all the runners complain about, you put a hill on it and they have a fit. So they're all pancake flat and you're using the same muscles just over and over and over. And most people are oriented towards their time. And so, they're just going the whole time. They barely stop at all. Well, in a trail race, you, like I said, you're on varying terrain, and if there's a hill, you hike it. It doesn't make sense to try to run a lot of steeper hills because the amount of effort you would have to expend to run up that hill isn't worth the amount of differential in the time. In other words, you might gain 20 seconds by running it as opposed to just a power hike. So it's just not worth trying to run it. So most trail runners will hike the hills. So now you're getting a break. You're getting a break from running. Your running muscles are getting a break. And then
making sense.
Yeah, and then you're stopping at aid stations for fuel because you got to fuel yourself because you're running at a slower pace. You're going to be out there longer. I mean, you get on a trail and you might average 11 minutes a mile, but when you're in a marathon, you might be running 8 minutes a mile. You know what I mean? There's nothing slowing you down. And so when you're on a trail, you're out there much longer. So the fueling becomes more important. So you're stopping at these aid stations. And it's just a more relaxed environment. I find
you feel it's more of a community than competitive.
Exactly. You're chit-chatting with the aid workers and at the aid station and your fellow runners. I mean, most of these ultras, I'll try to run with other runners and we'll have conversations. And it's just so much more laid back that I find it easier to run a 50K. And it's, like I said, it's only 5 more miles. So that's my argument. that's my point. So anyway, to get back to your question about the training. So I read this. I don't know if it was a book or a series of articles by this Dr. Phil Maffetone, and he worked with. I gotta try to remember this guy's name. There was a famous duo of triathletes that used, the triathlon over in Hawaii, the famous, I can't remember the name of it. It's the most famous triathlon in the world. They hold it in Hawaii every year. I should remember the name of it, but anyway,
I'll Google it while you're talking.
Yeah, you Google that. It was like 5 years in a row. This guy, his last name was Allen. He lost to a guy whose last name was Scott, and he just kept losing to. I mean, it was the same order every year. Scott won, Allen was second. So Allen's getting frustrated, and he's there. What can I do? He comes to this Maffetone, who was also a coach. He said, "You need to slow down. You're running. Your workouts are too hard. You're not training your aerobic system. You need a strong aerobic system, and that's not what you're training." And so he had him run below what's called the aerobic threshold.
Yeah.
And that is, from my recollection of it, is the point at which, when you're below your aerobic threshold, your primary fueling is coming from fat as opposed to carbohydrates. So, and in addition, your effort level is lower because you're running slower, and you have a less tendency to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, a lot of these endurance races rely on your aerobic system. So he had this guy slow down and train under his, and he was so frustrated because he couldn't train with any of his running partners anymore because, they all ran too fast. The formula, by the way, I'll just throw it out there, is 180. This is the formula for your heart rate. 180 minus your age, and then there's some adjustments, plus or minus 5, based on some other factors. I mean, you probably should Google it to get the details, but essentially that's what it is. And most people, when they try to do it, are shocked. Like, they can't run very far before they're over that heart rate level.
And this is what they call the Mathatone method. So
yes,
for people who are going to Google
MAF, yeah.
Okay.
So I started following it because I wanted to train for this ultra. So I would, monitor my heart rate, and I couldn't run up a hill. Even the slightest incline, I couldn't run up. I had to stop and walk up the hill. But I knew that in a trail race you were going to be hiking hills anyway, so I wasn't too upset about it. Yeah. But it was a little frustrating because, they didn't look like big hills to me. They would be normally something I just run up. Yeah. But I wanted to follow his method, so I followed it. There's this test he has you take, and so I forget. There's a name for the test, but it basically assesses your current aerobic system. And so I think I averaged something like 10 minutes a mile. I couldn't go faster than 10 minutes a mile. Otherwise, my heart rate would be above my aerobic threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I followed his training for about 3 or 4 months. And then I retested. And at one point, I got down to where I could run 8 minutes and 45 seconds without.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing, the improvement that happened. But you really have to be persistent with it. And I have known so many runners that just get too frustrated with it, and they
want to go faster. They say quicker times, and
they'll say, "This is sucking all the fun out of my running." I said, "Well, you got to view it as an investment, but that doesn't sell."
Yeah, well, it's like they say though, anything that's it's worth having, it takes time, and it is an investment. I'm definitely going to try that. It's really interesting. I've never actually heard that before. The only reason why I heard of it is because I listened to you on the Joe Health show. So
okay, yeah.
Was it the Hawaii Ironman, by the way?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's on the island Kona, I believe. They go through like lava fields, and it's just really brutal. Anyway, so this Alan followed his training program, and the next year he won. He beat Scott, and so that's the end of that story. But anyway, so I followed this, and I ran my first 50K. It was in Philadelphia. It was a park in the city limits. It was amazing. You just can't believe this park is actually technically part of Philadelphia. But anyway, it was pretty good. I ran into a couple problems. Being my first race, I wasn't really using the right equipment. This is another thing you learn. I had on. I'm trying to explain this because I don't know whether you guys use these bladders. That it's like It's like a running vest with a bladder.
Camelback.
Yeah, exactly. Camelback with a bladder.
Yeah.
So, well, part of the problem was, I had filled up my bladder before with water. Yeah, I did that, but I never did it on the fly through an aid station. I never practiced that. I never practiced actually trying to fill it up quickly in that type of situation, so it was a disaster. I mean, it was comical. I'm rushing and I think I have it closed, and then the water starts pouring out, and a wife of one of my friends that was there, she's chasing me through the field with a water pitcher, trying to refill it, and it was a very embarrassing moment. So I lost a lot of time. I don't know how much time I lost till I finally got the thing regulated. And then towards the end of the race, I had these horrible cramps. I never encountered cramps in my life before, and they were like lightning bolts in my calves. And so
Did you lose too much salt?
There's a lot of argument or discussion about what causes cramps. That's certainly one theory, but there's another theory is that the muscles just aren't once they get to a point where they aren't conditioned, you run into sort of like electrical problems, and it's like an electrical malfunction in your body. So there's two schools of thought on that. I don't know. I thought I hydrated well, but being my first race, maybe I didn't. It's possible. I don't know. But even still, with all that, I walked for a while, and then eventually they did go away. I finished, I think, in 5 hours and 14 minutes. I think was my time. And so I was still pretty happy. I think I took third in my age group. I was, it was a good experience.
Yeah, definitely. Even like going through all those things that you went through, but at the same time, it's, to do that amount of miles at the age you are, bearing in mind you've just reversed this disease. I mean, it's a huge achievement.
I was, but being the person that I am, I'm always looking forward to the next thing. So when I was done, I decided, well, 50K was nice, but I wonder what 50 miles is like. So, this is, my uniqueness, I guess. That's the way I think. So I signed up for the biggest and actually it's the oldest ultra in the United States. It's called the JFK 50 miler. And it was, so I ran that 50K in May of that year. And then JFK was in November. And so I was signed up for this race for November. And, I was a little nervous, obviously, because I struggled a lot a bit with the first 50K. And now I got to run 19 more miles. But I was game. I was my feeling was that I was following a training plan. There was a book called Relentless Forward Progress. And he claimed that you could run a 50 miler with as little as 50 miles a week of training. So I was following that pretty loosely. And then I got the idea, well, maybe I should do another 50K like a month before the 50 miler, just as a training run. It's just a training run. So I signed up. I signed up for this race in early October, and it was a little tougher. It was a little hillier than the first race I ran, but still not considered major. Like it's nothing like something out in the Rockies or anything like that. So the thing I never thought about was the possibility that I might injure myself in the training 50K. And that's exactly what I did.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So now I hurt my foot somehow. You're out there in the rocks and I don't know if it was a matter of twisting something or whether it was an overuse injury. I don't know, but my foot's injured now. And it's like, I'm starting to get a little nervous because I can't train and I've got a month to go before this 50 miler. And
most people would be thinking about pulling out.
Yeah, well, most people are intelligent. I wish I was a little smarter than that. But now I was trying to think of ways around it. Like I found out I could run on perfectly flat ground really slowly. If I did that, then I could do some running. So that's what I did. I would just run real slow on perfectly flat. But the race wasn't perfectly flat. That was the catch. The race was actually, you start out on the Appalachian Trail. Well, you run out of this town in Maryland and you run up a hill and then you get on the Appalachian Trail and you're on the Appalachian Trail for, I think it's 16 miles. And then you go down the mountain onto a towpath, kind of like what you're running. You mentioned that you're running now. It's a towpath along a river. That's what this is. So it goes exactly for a marathon distance, 26.2 miles. And then you go onto roads for the last 8 and it goes up and down like rolling hills. So anyway, I paid my money. I'm signed up. I'm going to give it a shot. What's the worst? The worst case is that I have to drop out. That's kind of how I was thinking, so I wanted to give a shot. So, I went and luckily, I guess because I was super rested because I couldn't run much. So I was definitely rested and I got through the Appalachian Trail without the foot flaring up. And I got on the towpath and I was feeling pretty good. And that's the race where I realized that a lot of this is mental. This ultra business is mental.
It must be.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I had gotten into this whole approach of thinking nothing but positive. I had, affirmations or whatever word you want to use, mantras that I would just keep repeating over and over, just nothing but positive. And I wouldn't allow myself to think of anything negative. I just trained myself to only think positive and to sort of look around and be grateful for the fact that, where I was, a few years away from, having to have a procedure my dad had at 80. I came a long way. So I was very grateful for how far I had come. And so I just had this attitude, positive attitude, and just this attitude of being grateful. I tried to make sure to thank all the aid workers and just, everything just it was positive. And I got a chance to run with a lot of amazing people because it was so large. There was 1,000 people in this race. Like I said, is the largest ultra in the United States. So I could talk to a lot of people. And the bottom line is a lot of it, like I said, is mental. So I just sort of just kept thinking positive and just not thinking. The other technique is you don't think anything beyond the current mile. Like you set your watch to information about the current mile, but you don't think anything beyond that because once you start
by mile,
it's mile by mile or aid station. Some people say aid station by aid station. You don't think beyond. You can't let yourself think beyond. Otherwise, you're doomed. once you start, or if you start complaining, that's the worst. I'm always amazed when I hear people complaining. That you're
Yeah,
doomed. Once you
it's
start,
negative. Yeah.
yeah, you can't let that stuff enter your mind. And, so anyway, I mean, the weather helped too. It was a perfect day. So, I finished and, I finished under 10 hours, which was sort of my stretch goal, was thinking, it'd be cool if I could finish under 10 hours. And I did. I ran 9:48. So, that was a great race. And, so
And how old
that's,
was you? How old was you when you ran 50 miles?
gosh. Oh, that was 2004. That was 6 years ago. So I was,
58.
yeah, 58. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it's 58. Yeah, it's 58.
That's phenomenal. As I said,
Yeah.
you've reversed this disease. You haven't run in all this time. Obviously, your diet's helped, but the power of the positive thinking and everything else it's really led to something quite amazing. I look at that. I'm 35, and
Okay.
I'm not sure I can make 10 mile yet, and I'm sure with a bit of training and positive mentality, I'll be able to get there, and then I'll be able to move on and do a bit further. But yeah, definitely need to take a leaf out of your book, and I think diet's going to be very important, play a very important part in me achieving a bit more than what I have done in the past as well. I feel like we could talk for another hour. I'm kind of conscious of how long we've been talking already.
Yeah, I just noticed on the screen it's almost an hour 20. Yeah. I could talk for. Yeah, I told you would have to rein me in because I could just go on.
It's absolutely fine. It's great. It's great to listen to, and I think we could definitely do this again. But just to sort of sum it up, let's look at. I mean, now, so that was. What did you say? That was 6 years ago. Are you still running ultras? Have you gone further than 50 miles? And
yes, I ended up. I'll try to sum this up quickly, but I ended up winning a race at age 60. I was the overall winner. Yeah. So that was a big highlight. That was a 6-hour race. You run as many miles as you can in 6 hours. And around a loop. And I did it in the extreme heat. It was like in the 90s, and a lot of people dropped out, but I didn't, and I won. So anyway, so there was that. And then I ran a 100-mile race. My first one, I was age 61, and I took 6th place overall.
100 miles.
100 miles, yeah. And they wrote it up in Ultra Running magazine. So I was thrilled about that.
Yeah.
So there's a whole story about that. I could talk an hour about that race. I mean, it was just amazing. Yeah, it was just an amazing race. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the highlights. And then I got Lyme disease, which I don't know if your listeners will know, but I lost a year and a half. I couldn't run for a year and a half because I had this Lyme disease that was misdiagnosed as an orthopedic issue. And long story short, I am back now, and I am running a 50-mile race this weekend. So it took me about 2 years to get back, but this weekend I will be running a 50-mile race. Yeah.
Wow, man, you've overcome quite a lot, and it's inspirational. It's amazing what you've done, and I take my hat off to you. And I know now when I go out on the road, I can always think about Rick Martin. I think about what he's achieved, and at the age that he's done that, and I know that'll push me through. So,
I just want to say real briefly though, we're all on our own journeys, so it's not always good to compare yourself to other people. But we're all on our own journey, and your mind will get used to longer distances as you do them. Your mind will become more comfortable with it. So it's a process. You can't rush it. You can't go out tomorrow, or you shouldn't go out tomorrow and try to run a 50K or something like that. Let the process happen, and you'll gain confidence as you add distance. So now I'll shut up.
So, yeah. And so patience is key in all of this. And I think definitely using some of those techniques that we've spoken about, I'm for sure going to try that, because just from what you said there, it does make a lot of sense, because a lot of the stuff I do is kind of high intensity. When I'm in the gym, I do high intensity classes. Not training aerobic, more sort of, I suppose, anaerobic. It's a lot faster. It's weights and stuff like that, rather than just a slow jog. I suppose it's building up to that. So yeah, it's been great, man. It's been informational, and I've really enjoyed having you on. And I will definitely have you back, because I think we've got a big gap there. What we could do with covering off the 100-mile race, the Lyme disease. There's so much, and I know you said that probably we don't get as much Lyme disease. I know it's caused by ticks and stuff, but I think a lot of people, especially in the running community, will be aware of that, and will definitely want to hear more. So if you'll come back, Rick, we'll do this again.
Definitely. I would love to come back. I don't feel like I gave enough tips and advice. I'm pretty much just telling my story, but I like to get into maybe more a little about some advice and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'd love that. We'll literally put a podcast together. Just tips, diet advice, tips on running, tips on stretching as well. I didn't even get to talk about the dynamic stretching and stuff. So there's so much more to go. But yeah, we'll wrap this one up today, and I'll keep in touch with you, and we'll get you back on.
Okay, sounds good, Richard. Thanks for having me on.
All right, no problem. And thank you very much for joining me today.